One of history's most famous defeats, Thermopylae, remains etched in our collective memory, not just for its tragedy, but for the extraordinary courage it revealed. In the shadow of the mountains, a handful of warriors stood against the might of an empire, their story echoing through the ages. What seemed like a hopeless loss actually set the stage for an incredible victory that would shape the destiny of Western civilization. The sacrifice at Thermopylae was not in vain. It was the spark that ignited a nation's resolve. A small force of Greek warriors, led by the legendary Spartans, faced a massive Persian army that outnumbered them by thousands. The odds were overwhelming, yet their determination was unbreakable. They fought to the last man, sacrificing themselves to buy Greece precious time. Their stand was not just a military maneuver, but a message to all of Greece. Freedom was worth any price. This delay allowed the Greeks to prepare for a naval battle that would change Western civilization. At Salamis, the Greek fleet, inspired by the sacrifice at Thermopylae, would turn the tide against the Persians. Thermopylae was more than a clash of armies. It was a collision of worlds and ideologies. The values of democracy, freedom, and unity stood against the might of imperial conquest. The Persians, led by King Xerxes, brought an enormous army, expecting an easy victory. Their confidence was matched only by the determination of their opponents. But the Greeks, hopelessly outnumbered, stood their ground for freedom. Their unity and discipline became their greatest weapons, holding the line against impossible odds. Using the narrow pass to their advantage, they turned numbers into a brutal, close-quarters fight. The terrain became their ally, forcing the Persians into a bottleneck where courage mattered more than numbers. Their stand became a symbol of courage against impossible odds. The name of Leonidas and his Spartans would become legendary, inspiring poets, leaders, and warriors for centuries. To understand why this battle is legendary, we must look at the ambitions of Persia and the resolve of Greece. The fate of entire civilizations hung in the balance at Thermopylae. This is the story of how a narrow pass became the stage for one of history's most defining moments. A moment when the actions of a few changed the course of the world. The defeat at Thermopylae would echo for centuries, inspiring generations to come to stand for what they believe in, no matter the odds. Why did Persia invade Greece? What drove two of the ancient world's greatest civilizations into a clash that would echo through history? The roots of this conflict stretch back to the reign of King Darius, the powerful ruler of the Persian Empire and father to Xerxes. Darius sought to punish Athens for their support of a rebellious uprising in Ionia, a region under Persian control. His campaign ended in disaster at the Battle of Marathon, where the smaller Greek force achieved a stunning victory. This defeat was a deep humiliation for Persia, and it ignited a burning desire for vengeance in Xerxes, Darius's ambitious son. Determined to succeed where his father had failed, Xerxes began assembling the largest army the world had ever seen, drawing soldiers from every corner of his vast empire. His goal was not just conquest, but to secure his legacy and prove Persian dominance. For Persia, this war was about power, pride, and retribution. For the Greeks, it was a desperate struggle for survival, freedom, and the preservation of their way of life. The Greek city-states, often bitter rivals, recognized the looming threat. For the first time, they set aside their differences and united against a common enemy. Led by the military might of Sparta and the strategic brilliance of Athens, this fragile alliance was forged out of necessity, as the Greeks prepared to defend their homeland and their cherished independence. For the Greeks, the idea of subjugation was unthinkable. Their fierce pride and love of freedom bound them together in the face of overwhelming odds. As Xerxes' massive army marched westward, the Greeks braced themselves for a battle that would determine not just their own fate, but the future of Western civilization. The coming conflict was about more than territory or power. It was a struggle for identity, culture, and the destiny of two worlds. The stage was set. The armies gathered, the tension mounting, as the world watched and waited for the storm to break. The Persians sought to expand their empire and crush resistance. The Greeks to endure and protect all they held dear. The seeds of war had been sown, and soon the world would witness a clash that would shape the course of history forever. The armies at Thermopylae were worlds apart. The Persians fielded a vast, diverse force, tens of thousands from across their empire. Their army was a display of imperial might, but also a patchwork of languages, tactics, and loyalties. Many Persian soldiers wore light armor and had little personal stake in the fight. In contrast, the Greeks were few but fiercely united. Led by 300 Spartans under King Leonidas, joined by thousands of allies, they formed a disciplined phalanx. Greek hoplites were heavily armored, wielding long spears and large shields. Their tight formation created an almost impenetrable wall, especially in the narrow pass. Every man depended on his neighbor, forging a brotherhood in battle. The Greeks fought for home and freedom, giving them a resolve the Persians lacked. The clash at Thermopylae was not just of armies, but of spirit and purpose. The difference would soon become clear. The Greeks chose Thermopylae for its narrow terrain, a masterstroke of strategy. Here, Persian numbers meant little. Only a few could attack at once. The pass, flanked by mountains and sea, funneled the enemy into a killing ground. The Greeks rebuilt an old wall, strengthening their position. Xerxes was stunned by their defiance, expecting them to flee. Instead, the Spartans calmly prepared for battle, unfazed by the Persian horde. Xerxes waited, hoping fear would break the Greeks. But they stood firm. The Persians believed sheer numbers would win the day. They were about to learn the power of discipline and determination. The battle for the hot gates was about to begin. On the fifth day, Xerxes unleashed his vast army, a force so immense it seemed to stretch from horizon to horizon. The ground trembled beneath the feet of tens of thousands of Persian soldiers, their armor glinting in the morning sun, as they prepared to overwhelm the defenders at Thermopylae. Wave after wave of Persians crashed against the Greek phalanx, but the wall of bronze shields held firm, unyielding in the face of overwhelming numbers. The Greeks' long spears and heavy shields cut down attackers before they could get close, their discipline and unity turning the narrow pass into a killing ground. Persian losses mounted with every assault. The Greeks, fighting in shifts, rotated fresh fighters to the front, maintaining their strength and stamina as the day wore on. Frustrated, Xerxes sent in his elite immortals, the most feared warriors in his empire. Yet even these legendary soldiers could not break the Greek line. The narrow pass of Thermopylae nullified the Persians' advantage in numbers and cavalry, forcing them to fight on the Greeks' terms in brutal close-quarters combat. The Greeks used clever tactics like feigned retreats to lure their enemies into traps, then turned and destroyed them with sudden, coordinated counterattacks. After 2 days of relentless fighting, the pass was littered with Persian dead, and still the Greeks stood unbroken, their courage inspiring all who witnessed the struggle. Xerxes grew desperate as his best troops failed to make any progress. The sight of his finest warriors falling shook his confidence. The Spartans' legendary discipline and relentless training proved unbeatable in the chaos of close quarters, their formation a living fortress. The Persians faced not just a wall of bronze and steel, but a wall of iron will, unyielding, determined, and utterly resolute. The world's greatest army, assembled from every corner of the Persian Empire, was being held at bay by a handful of warriors defending their homeland. The cost for Persia was staggering. Thousands of lives lost for every foot gained, morale shaken by the Greeks' stubborn resistance. In the blood-soaked earth of Thermopylae, a legend was being forged, one of sacrifice, valor, and the unbreakable spirit of those who stood against impossible odds. Just as hope faded for Persia, betrayal changed everything. A Greek named Ephialtes revealed a secret mountain path to Xerxes. Guided by Ephialtes, Persian troops moved to outflank the Greeks. The path was lightly guarded. The defenders were caught off guard and retreated, leaving the way open. Leonidas learned the Persians were behind them. The pass was lost. Facing certain defeat, Leonidas made a fateful choice. He ordered most of the Greek army to retreat and fight another day. He and his 300 Spartans, joined by 700 Thespians and a few others, stayed to make a last stand. Their sacrifice would buy time for Greece. They prepared to fight to the death, knowing their fate was sealed. The final act of Thermopylae was about to begin. The Greeks would show the world the meaning of courage. Their stand would echo through history. The last day dawned grimly for Leonidas and his men. With the Persians closing in from both sides, the Greeks fought with unmatched ferocity. No longer in tight formation, They battled as individuals, inflicting heavy losses. Leonidas fell in the thick of combat, his men fighting desperately to recover his body. Surrounded, the survivors retreated to a small hill, making their final stand. They fought with swords, hands, and teeth, unyielding to the end. Xerxes, unwilling to lose more men, ordered his archers to finish them. A rain of arrows ended the last defenders. The pass was open, but at a terrible cost to Persia. The sacrifice of the Spartans became a rallying cry for all of Greece. Their legend would inspire resistance and unity. Xerxes had won the pass, but the victory was hollow. His army marched south, burning Athens, but the Greek spirit was unbroken. The heavy losses at Thermopylae shook Persian morale. The Greeks' resistance showed they would not be easily conquered. The delay at Thermopylae allowed the Greek navy to prepare at Salamis. In the narrow straits, the smaller Greek fleet destroyed much of the Persian navy. This stunning victory forced Xerxes to retreat, leaving his general to finish the war. The momentum had shifted. Greek unity and resolve grew stronger. The following year, the Greeks defeated the Persians at Plataea, ending the invasion. Thermopylae's defeat had paved the way for ultimate Greek triumph. The world had changed forever. Thermopylae became a legend, an enduring symbol of courage and sacrifice. The Spartans' stand inspired generations, their epitaph echoing through history. The battle showed the power of unity and the defense of freedom against tyranny. Greek victory allowed democracy, philosophy, and art to flourish. Had Persia won, our world might look very different. Thermopylae's legacy is both military and cultural, a turning point for Western civilization. Its story has inspired leaders, revolutionaries, and artists for centuries. Today, it remains a powerful reminder of what determined individuals can achieve. The Epic of Thermopylae is just one chapter in the rich history of ancient Persia and Greece. There is much more to discover. History's greatest stories are far from over.